How are you doing, man?
Good, man. Good. Just enjoying a nice, Austin day. How about you?
I wish I could say the same. I live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, so it's never we're getting to that point where it's not the nicest of days. It's starting to get cold, and I'm
Yeah.
from California, so it's just I'm doing all I can to hang on in there. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Does that affect your mood at all?
You know what's funny is I never had any kind of seasonal depression or mood things happen for me with the weather. But the more that I dove into my emotions and my feelings and identifying them, that's when it started to affect me.
Mm.
Because I grew up in LA. I'm from the inner city, and I was kind of raised hard. So I kind of suppressed my emotions and always had, like my therapist says, I I'm like a horse with blinders up. That's how I've lived most of my life. And my goal this year was to really peel back those layers and really understand my emotions and feelings, identify them, and sit with them. And when I started to do that, I realized how sensitive I actually was to a lot of things. And I also realized that that was a superpower, but now I'm dealing with, okay, the weather does have an effect on me. What should I do now? You know what I mean? So, all that to say, it did have an effect on me last winter, and I'm more prepared this winter to hopefully be able to combat it some kind of way because it was my first
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. That's a great metaphor, actually, for just like life in general. It's because, you were experiencing the impact of the seasonal changes without realizing it, right? And that was
Mm-hmm.
infecting or like subconsciously affecting maybe your patience levels or your frustration or your
Mm-hmm.
general mood with people around you, without really realizing it. And then now
Mm-hmm.
that you've expanded your awareness internally, now that you can see it happening, now you actually clock it as it's arising, as opposed to sort
Mm-hmm.
of having an extra layer of tension without really realizing it. So it's kind of a nice symbolism.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a nice symbolism when we have somebody like you who's teaching us how to deal with it when it comes. You know what I mean? Like, I think for me, and that's why I love your work so much because I think all my life I grew up trying to control things because I lived in like a hostile environment, and I had parents who did a good job of letting me know this is where you live. This is what can happen. You can go this way or that way. And ultimately, we're going to guide you, but you have to choose. And I think growing up that way made me realize I had to be in control of things and kind of think ahead before they happen, before
Hmm.
something bad happened. Really, it was always like, expect the worst. It's like, expect the worst and prepare for the worst. And then hopefully the best comes. You know what I mean? That's kind of what my mindset was. And when I started following you all these years ago, I realized how important it was to let go of control. But when your mind is conditioned to control things, and when you in my in my life, control has been good because I'm the first person to graduate high school in my family. I'm the first one to go to college. I was the first one to go to the NFL. I'm married going on 10 years, so control has been good for me. But as I peel back these layers, I'm like, oh, um, it's kind of been good. It's kind of been good. But now that I have like three little human beings, three little daughters, where I realize a lot of the things that I try to control, I have to let go to be the best father. That's when it really started to hit me that control has to um I have to like let it go because I
Right.
realized how tense I was when I didn't have control of when my daughters get sick or when something happens or I gotta wake up at 3 in the morning or whatever. You know what I mean? So like where do you think that starts for people? Do you think everybody has is conditioned to have some kind of control because that's our default setting as human beings, or do you think that's taught?
I think it's usually it arises in different ways. It depends on what our circumstances and our experiences are. Some people hold on to it more tightly because of a traumatic experience. So, in order
Mm-hmm.
to feel a sense of normalization and safety, they need to feel like they're controlling everything around them. And that trauma doesn't have to be like a capital T. It can be a bunch of smaller, kind of lowercase t type of things, where just over time it makes it to where they have anxiety, they don't feel maybe a sense of safety or positive connection at home or in the world. And so they start to try and control their environment so that it feels stable and safe. And as you mentioned, trying to predict multiple steps ahead of what's going to happen next is just another one of those modalities to try and feel safety and to try and feel control. Because if you're expecting what's going to happen next, then you're not going to be caught off guard. Because if we're not prepared, we're not caught, off guard. If when we're caught off guard, then that we're vulnerable in that moment because we don't know what to do next, and that is really, really terrifying to someone who has experienced some type of trauma where they felt helpless or they felt like they didn't have anyone to count on or rely on. And so I feel like those things, they all come from conditioned experience, but then they get really complicated and complex depending on kind of what happens after that experience and the environment and so forth. And I'm curious for you, like from what you described to me in your past, did that also did a trait of hyper independence emerge from that as well? Like you always just took care of things yourself?
Yeah, and I was also the oldest of my
Mm-hmm.
siblings. I have a little brother and a little sister, and I think for me, I've always I've always said that the the only way that I learn is by doing it and just learning on the way, and like that just is what it is. And I've learned throughout my life that I've heard a lot of people on my path to like for success, but I was working with the information that I had at the time. Like I always was willing to work hard. I was always willing to try things and experiment, but that came at the cost of other people's feelings and probably other people's opportunities. So I would say yeah, I was that way. And honestly, when I look back at my life, I'm just like, damn, dude, like I wish I would have did that a little bit differently because of this person that I hurt or
Right.
the things that I said that I didn't realize had an impact on so many people that were around me. You know what I mean? So 100%, like I was that way. I did develop
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I definitely feel that. And then also that hypervigilance comes hand in hand with that hyper independence where, if you don't feel like you have resources or support, then you really double down on yourself and you become really autodidactic, like you described, like you just figure things out on your own. It's
Mm-hmm.
because you're like, no one's going to show me, or like, I don't have a safety net, so I got to figure it out. It's like your reptile brain kicks on and you go into
Mm-hmm.
this kind of survival mode where you just go like, I have to take care of everything myself, and then that's how I'm going to feel safe. That's how I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
feel good. And then the hypervigilance comes from the fear of like not having anything to fall back on and not having people to count on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I'm curious, then did you get to a point where once you started having awareness arise around that dependence and that need for control, um, did you start to realize like any type of feeling of isolation at all?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say isolation because I always felt like I knew my whole life I knew I didn't get to where I got to by myself. I knew that I believe that God put the right people in my life and he gave me a work ethic to get the things that I wanted. And I think when
Mhm.
opportunities came, I was ready for it. So I always knew that it wasn't just me. And I knew that like there were people around me who were special that if it wasn't for that person, I wouldn't be where I'm at. So I wouldn't say isolation from a communal perspective, but I would say isolation from a lack of resources and tools that I can do something that I felt like a child would be able to do. So being
Yeah.
able to like express my emotions or being able to articulate myself well. It's just like when you get around people like I'm from LA. I get a scholarship to come to Minnesota. Oh, it is predominantly Caucasian people here, and like they speak really well. They can have conversation with each other. The way that I grew up, people we didn't have a lot of words to put together to converse about how we feel and what's going on. How can we solve a problem? So I felt isolated when I started to realize where I'm from, how I want to get better, and then you start the blinders start coming off. I'm like, oh my god, there's so many conversations that are happening around me. Now I feel alone. Now
Hmm.
I feel like I can't keep up with adults who can hash out a problem that in my world is so big that would take my family not talking to each other for 2 weeks, where I see like my wife's family talking for 10 minutes and they like resolve an issue really, really quick.
Right.
So I was isolated from a I don't have the tools to keep up as an adult when it comes to communication, identifying emotions and feelings, and then articulating what I'm feeling to my wife or my
Yeah.
in-laws or my new friends in my adult life. So I was isolated very much in that way.
Yeah. And that, obviously communication is everything, man. Being able to
Mm-hmm.
actually understand what you're feeling or thinking and then express it clearly is how you cut that, the tension down from 2 weeks to 10 minutes, like you
Yeah,
mentioned.
for real.
Um, but, I ask those questions because I just resonate a lot with what you're saying, and like what you've
Mm,
experienced in my own life. And I had all of the same qualities that you're talking about.
mm,
And one of the things that dawned on me was that needing that sense of, or not needing, but creating that sense of control in life, and the things I leaned on whenever I was younger was being, coming off as the really smart, confident one at all times, and always like, knowing things before other people, and knowing having these ideas and this ability to talk about things that would put me in a hierarchical place that was higher kind of in my own mind and in the social dynamic than the people that I was interacting with. And now like it's interesting is because this stuff is like these human dynamics are so slippery because you can be warm and you can have like friends and be funny and have a good time and all this stuff and have a lot of people in your life. But like for me, whenever I started cracking open a lot of this stuff, I realized that I was isolated internally in the safe
mm,
world I created. So in this world of control, even though that like, I go to like functions and people want to come and talk to me, they want it because, I'm talking about different stuff and interesting stuff. And like, I know how to make someone feel seen and look deeply into them so that they feel a deep sense of, resonance between us. And that's what we all look for in human connection. And as I went deeper into all of this stuff internally, I was like, oh yeah, I've created this kind of world where I never have to be really vulnerable. I can be
mm,
entertaining, I can be charming, I can be affable and smart, and I can be cool, but I'm not actually not only am I not sharing what I'm feeling, I'm not even feeling what I'm feeling because it's
mm,
so compartmentalized and detached, So it was a process of having that expanded awareness and then really having to track back like the chords to connect to
mm,
what was that core wound, and I really did a lot of meditating on that caused that shift and to start with and track it all the way back and start to connect those emotional wires inside so that I could even begin to feel and understand what my body was trying to send to my mind, so
mm,
it's quite a however it shows up for all of us, for you in some ways and for me and some others. It's a process, but it also just shows that if you are tenacious and you start looking inward and you're honest with yourself and you focus on what's happening in the present, you know a lot is possible. A lot is possible, man.
No, 100%. Like what you said a lot of things that I love. Like when you said inward, I think about when I read Young Pueblo's book all these years ago when I was having a hard time. And then you also said something that reminds me of um, um, I can't remember what you said, but like connecting like the dots is kind of what you said. I always
Yeah.
said like finding the root of the problem is what I've always told myself. Like, what is the root of what I'm feeling? And when you do that backtracking, you see, oh, it's probably because of that. And now we have to dissect that root and then the other root. And you said something at the beginning of the conversation that I think is really important that I want you to dive into to even help me understand. You said trauma doesn't have to be with a capital T, it can be a small t. And can you help us understand what that means? Because the word trauma is so big. And I think, to be honest with you, some people take that word and they kind of like build a relationship with it to where they cope on it. They're like, I've been traumatized. I'm like, well, yeah, like trauma is something that, like, I played football. I had a lot of like literal physical trauma. And I look back at my past, I'm like, I had some big trauma, capital T, but that's subjective based on who I am and how I view that situation, right? So,
Hmm.
how are we able to identify what's the capital T versus the lowercase t of trauma?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. And also, it's like, yeah, it's like whenever people get weird about calling things sacred or spiritual or something like that, it's like life is traumatic. Like, and we all experience it. Like, you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
whenever we're born, we're screaming, man. We're in pain.
yeah.
And then it's just rough from there. And it's same thing with people
Mm-hmm.
who are like, well, this is sacred. It's like, as opposed to what, man? It's like everything is
Mm-hmm.
sacred. The whole universe is sacred.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's, people, like you said, they tend to in my experience, they discount smaller pains that we experience as people. because such greater pains exist in life. It's like the old thing of someone minimizing their own suffering whenever they're like, well, maybe I'm super depressed, but at least I'm not, working in a coal mine somewhere, or I'm not starving. It's like that's
Mm.
not a healthy way to rationalize. Like, it's good to have
Bro,
perspective.
I am so happy you said that. Hold on, please. I'm so sorry for cutting you off. But I'm gonna
No,
tell you
it's all
one
good.
thing that I'm gonna tell you one thing that bothered me when growing up, and I've always kind of had like a that's not right growing up. Like I'm like, I don't, you're an adult, but I don't really trust you, and I don't think that's right. But like, I'll be like, I'm hungry. I'll be like, I'm starving, and like my teacher would be like, you're not starving. Kids in Africa are starving. I'm just like, yo, like what are we talking about right now? You know what I mean? Like I can't
Yeah.
express myself as like a 9-year-old. Now I'm like, you're comparing me to kids in Africa. It's like, and I think that's speaking to like what you're saying. It's like we can't. It's not like there's no comparison in my opinion. So sorry, but
It's all
that just
good.
came up in my head.
No, I'm glad it connected, man. Yeah, it's like suffering is relative. That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's like no matter what someone else is experiencing, if you're feeling some type of pain, it's pain. It doesn't matter because ultimately to dig even deeper into it, it's like your familiarity with what's possible in terms of pain only expands so far as what you've experienced. And so to you, your everything that you've experienced is the maximum level of pain that you can really understand. Now,
Mm-hmm.
someone who's experienced like intense, intense pain, their awareness of it is going to be way greater because they've actually experienced it, right? But someone who's experienced a little thing, it's a discomfort, some type of small pain, to them, it's going to seem big because it's all that they've known. It's filling the
Mm-hmm.
container, as it were. So this kind of goes back to the lowercase and uppercase T's. Um, so, we can, that big traumas is like if someone goes to war, or if someone is like, shot a bunch of times, or someone is like greatly emotionally or physically abused. I mean, those things are very, very traumatic. And they're going to have like deeply arresting, life altering circumstances, like at the point that they happen, right? I think that that's what like a lot of people think of whenever they think about trauma. But the lowercase t ones are kind of things like something that you just said, like whenever you expressed, being, say I'm hungry, which is that's like you're calling out because you're saying like, hey, I'm hungry, and then someone says, hey, you're not hungry. People in Africa, they're starving, they're hungry. That just basically makes it to where your biological need was ignored, and then there's also an element of humiliation there because it was like they weren't seeing
Mm-hmm.
your emotions and they were basically belittling you for having a biological function. And so on a very root level, it makes you feel small, it makes you feel stupid, and it makes you feel unseen. And so it's like those little things like that, man, we can experience those every day, and especially in the formative years before you become an adult and kind of create your own ecosystem. It's like you can just collect those like crazy, and those things build up and they compound over time, and they seep into the soil of our consciousness. And whenever that happens, it starts to affect everything that is going on above that. And it starts to makes us reactive. It makes us feel, have limiting thoughts. It makes us feel bad about ourselves. It makes us feel scared to take risks. It makes us feel untrustworthy towards other people. All these things kind of just plant little seeds and grow over time.
So I told you I've been working on doing this inner work for some time. I've been doing it for years, but I feel like I say like the past year just because I feel like that's where I had the most growth from like these little seeds that I've planted. And you said the word that I was thinking of was compound. Like when I go back and I find the roots of these problems, I have like the big T's. Like I've had things with my parents that I saw, things that happened to me in middle school, high school, the whole nine, where I had like the big T's. But when I really boiled it down, it was the little T's of the compounded over and over. Those things controlled how I viewed myself. They controlled my confidence. They controlled how, if I listened to my intuition, they controlled how I got up every day. It controlled everything. And I
Hmm.
found myself being like, oh, that thing that this teacher said to me in fourth grade, that actually has an effect on how I think about authority. You know what I mean? It's like these little
100%.
things that compound that we deal with every single day. You know what I mean? So like I resonate with that so much that the big T's matter. Like I think you did a good job talking about like getting shot or being in war or something like that. Like that we all can see that is a big deal. Seeing death or getting traumatically injured is big. But I think the compounding of the little T's is huge, man, because I think that just dictates. I think one, it's people can relate to that. We all can relate to that really quickly,
Hmm.
for one. But two, it's like you can see those little things and again dissect. Oh, this happened, and it makes me think that way. Now I have to do the work to like know that that isn't true. How do we go about doing that when we have all these compounded little T's and we see all the little problems? How do we let ourselves know that that isn't true and now we can go? Because I believe that this goes into being able to actually listen to our intuition when
Hmm.
we don't believe in all those the compounding little T's that we get from just going through life.
Yeah, I think it starts with paying attention. Like healing and change, and everything happens in the present moment. That's the intersection of your life. And it begins with maybe listening to a conversation like this, maybe reading a book or a podcast or something like that that's useful. You begin to gain insight, which is just the curiosity to start paying attention. You start paying attention to what are you thinking in each moment? What are you feeling in each moment? How are the thoughts that are arising for you responding with the environment that you're in, with the people that you're talking to? And the more that you start paying attention, the more your awareness clarifies around just what's happening right now. And when you're able to begin self monitoring in that way, you start noticing in moments of experience whenever some type of resistance arises, or some type of fear arises, or a negative emotion arises. And whenever that happens, you can then start getting curious about those things. And you start tracking them mentally and noticing like, oh, in this moment, like whenever I go to talk about, relationship issues with my partner or something, my throat gets dry and my heart starts racing. And normally you may have not paid attention to that. But once you start actively being more mindful in the moment, you notice that like that's not a normal response. I'm going into like survival mode right now, like physically. And so that means that I need to start exploring and understanding and really importantly is communicating to other people that those things are happening. So it's a matter of paying attention to looking within and to noticing when you're feeling those negative or painful things arise and start getting curious about them, addressing them.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I think that is really useful, and I'll say I don't want to generalize, but I think that men often have a hard time expressing their emotions, or they
Mm-hmm.
can. Maybe um, people my generation older, all I could speak for. I and I can speak for myself. I certainly have over the years. I think that one thing that was really useful for me was what I call like microdosing emotions. So it's like so, so instead of like having some type of feeling and then like you feel yourself shutting it down and compartmentalizing it or ignoring it, instead of just doing that and telling yourself the story like I'm fine, it doesn't matter, I don't need to deal with this, I'm cool, I can keep going. And that's what I did for pretty much like most of my life. It was just like, nah, I'm all good. um
Mm-hmm.
Instead, just like begin sharing like one sentence, like casually, about what it is that you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's even if you had a rough day and you get home, a lot of people will try and just kind of put on a tough face or just ignore it or whatever, or shut it down, or not talk about their day and just kind of move on. But even something as simple as saying to your partner or a friend, like, "Phew, man, this is a rough day today. I'm feeling totally wiped and exhausted." Something as simple as that, where like I was stressed today, like, but I'm glad to be home now. Or in a conversation with your partner being like, this conversation is making me like feel a little like vulnerable, which makes me a little uncomfortable and a little anxious, but I want to have it, so let's go. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be this big thing. You just start gently communicating little pieces of what's going on inside of you.
I have
And
something I wanna add on to that really quick though.
sure,
I
please, yeah.
think I think so when I hear you speaking, I think about when I went through this, and I remember, okay, I'm going to start attempting to express how I feel. And what I realized was I was going into that unknowingly knowing that I'm looking for help on the other end. If
Hmm.
I say, "Hey, Charlotte, man, I'm having a hard day today," and she just goes like, "Oh yeah, that sucks." It's
Yeah.
like, well, that hurt. You know what I mean? That actually really hurt me because I'm like, I'm putting my heart on the line with this one sentence. Little do you know, my whole my whole heart is on the plate right now. What do you say? Like, what's that for me? Because I think a lot of people deal with that. Like, I'm going to try this since the other person on the other end probably has better skills than me. They don't really see it as like my heart. I'm pouring my heart in this one sentence, and
Yeah.
I'm looking for something back for them. How do we navigate something like that when it's so new?
Well, this is really funny is that, and again, I don't want to generalize too much, but I'll say like, um, I do think that, women often really appreciate being heard and being like allowing like someone to receive what they're saying. And they're not necessarily looking for a solution. They're not looking for you to help them. They just want to communicate and tell you what's going on with them and be heard, which is beautiful and really valuable. Generally, a lot of times men are compulsions to fix things and to try and somehow explain things and all this type of stuff. And so, whenever from maybe from your mind, whenever you communicate, hey, today was really rough, you're looking for action. You're looking for like, can we talk about this? I want to try and like move through this and fix this. And by her going, that sucks, she was actually saying, I hear you. She was like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that sucks. I hear you. And so she kind
Mm-hmm.
of received what you said and was like, yeah, that sucks, thinking that maybe just you needed to just get it off your chest and be heard, right? But really what you might have been looking for was like, let's get into this. I need to kind of parse this out a little bit. So I would say in that moment, just making that clear, being like, it does suck, and then being like, maybe go into more detail, or if you need to or want to say like, I'd love to like, if you're down, I'd love to talk to you about this and kind of like go through, because if you, to take it even more vulnerable, you could say like, I'm not sure what I'm even feeling throughout some of this stuff, and I'd love to talk to you about it and get your perspective on it. And that way, it expresses and makes it clear that you're looking for solution. You're looking for some that type of integrative, active
Mm-hmm.
partnership moment, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
just being heard.
Yeah, that's so good, man. Because like I told you earlier, like I like kind of just ain't really got nobody to teach me, so I'm just like going for it and I'm learning on the way. And I learned that kind of intuitively. I'm like, okay, like when I speak to Charlotte, when I just kind of put my heart on the platter, that's just not working out really well. So maybe I need to like preface like, hey, I'm having a hard time, and I want to like let you know that I'm having a hard time. So when I say this to you, like be mindful of like kind of how you respond. Like
Yeah.
and it's been very that clear. And to my surprise, she was really receptive to that. Where like I thought like I will be coming off mean if I phrase it that way. I was like, no matter how I package this, if I say it in like the most calmest voice in the world, she's still going to see it as a negative. And then when I, no matter how I say it now, she's receptive to it and she's really open, and it makes our relationship stronger when I'm able to like identify, process, articulate opportunity to speak about
Mhm.
how I'm feeling, and then it makes us closer. You know what I mean? I know that's taking work, and when we think about finding the root of it, of why those things can't come up for me. I've never seen healthy communication between two adults. My mom and dad got divorced when I was in middle school. I moved with my high school coach in high school, and he got divorced. So I seen two really bad marriages. So I'm like, all right, well, it seems like if you have a problem, you don't talk and you kind of just put it to the side and you go on about life. And I knew that I want to be in a marriage and be successful at it. So I knew at some point I gotta look in the mirror and I'm
Mhm.
gonna have to like face my wife and be like, I am sad. Like, I am sad, and I want to talk to you about it. And it probably has nothing to do with you, or it probably has something to do with you. I don't know, but this is what it is. Can we talk about it? And that has changed the game for my marriage.
That's amazing, man. And also, like, we're just meeting each other, but let me just say, I'm proud of you for doing that, because I know how hard it is, man. And I know, like, when you don't have the fear that comes from that, whenever you've lived
Mm,
through those examples in life, which I lived through the exact same thing that you mentioned. That's the isolation I was talking about at the beginning. That's being trapped in
Mm,
your own sense of self and not being able to say how you really feel because you're scared or you think it's going to come off as being aggressive. And so you can be like peaceful and kind with people, but you can't go deeper and actually go to what really matters because you've created this kind of, or this wall has kind of been created around you, you know? And so the
mhm.
fact that you're able to just break through that by being direct and being opening yourself up is really beautiful, man. And it's tough, you know.
Thank you, man. That actually means a lot. It really does mean a lot to me because my therapist said, like, being an ex-athlete, like, I thrive off of, like, saying that I've been doing a good job, so that really does mean a lot to me. One thing you said earlier, that I had a hard time with as well, is you said, when you're processing how you're feeling, you have to realize that, oh, the way that this is coming up isn't normal. And I would say, in my experience, well, it was normal until I realized that the book that I read told me it wasn't normal. What Cory Allen told me, talks about, I realized it wasn't normal. And now I have to convince myself, no matter what Cory says or this book says, that it's not normal. Because to me, it's been normal forever. Right? Like,
Yeah.
I remember being like, this is just who I am. It is what it is. And I'm like, this is how I grew up. And then it's normal because when I go back home to LA, this is how we talk. This is how we
Mhm.
act. It is what it is. But as you mature and you grow up, you're like, oh, that isn't normal. How do we go? Where what is normal and not normal? You know what I mean? Like, when do you have to change the normal?
Yeah, man. I know what you're saying. It's like, well, the fact is that nothing is normal. That's the reality.
Mm,
What you just normalize what you've experienced and you
mm,
accept whatever like the chaos and the randomness of where you were born at what time and what race and gender and sex and moment and culture and all these things swirl together in this chaos of like boom, you're born in this city, as you look like this, you're this tall, all these factors, they all imprint how you think about yourself and how you perceive the world, and then
mm,
you have the ecosystem of thought and culture around you that you're living in as well, that's all impacting you greatly and shaping your worldview. And that happens to us all so young that it happens before we have self-awareness. That's what's wild
mm,
about it. So if you think back to your
mm,
earliest memory, if you're 3 or 4 years old, like we were already getting punished and rewarded and told what was right and wrong and who's good and who's bad and how we should think before we even were aware. And that's why things like religion have such a deep, like, nervous system effect on people,
mm,
is because they've been told that stuff since before they even could think.
mm,
And so we just we accept what we've experienced as truth and what is, and so it becomes normalized. And you have to generally have some type of, you know, external event, in a lot of times, that makes you realize that how you're going through life is just how you're going through it. It's not what all there is, or what all the possibilities are. And I think that that's something that is really important for people to understand. It's like, just because it's what you've experienced doesn't mean that it's the way things have to be.
mm,
And that that limiting thought of thinking like, oh well, if you had parents that had a destructive marriage, you think, well, that's what relationships are. I'm never going to have a
mm,
healthy relationship. It's like that mental story, that's just something that you're grasping, but based on one of
mm,
those small T traumas. And it's like,
mm,
once you start realizing that, like, everything is possible, everything is available, you just have to, again, like, be mindful, notice whenever you are making assumptions. Because whenever you make assumptions, it turns into like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like,
mm,
for example, like if you're going to go to a party and you're feeling a little bit anxious, you're like, I don't want to be, it's going to be weird. People aren't going to talk to me. I'm going to feel awkward. And then you go, and then you're weird and you're awkward because you're scared that people are going to be, you know, seeing you as weird and awkward, then they're gonna start treating you like that because you were being weird and awkward, right? So you get this mental story, you grasp it, and then you make it come true by going there and having the emotion and the thought turn into action, right? But conversely, if you have that thought and then you go, wait a second, what am I talking about? I haven't even, I'm not there yet. Let me go there, just open mind, just be present and just kind of relax and let go and see what's real, see what's actually happening in reality versus all of the images that and stories that are coming up in my mind. And let me take it in the present moment. And then you get there, you're relaxed, you're cool, people are hanging out, having a good time, you have some good conversations, and everything's cool. And so it's like that same process works with us in every area of our life. We have this assumption that like I can't do this for a living, like I can't have this type of relationship, I can't learn to express myself, I can't be a person that travels the world, like it, like all that stuff is, it's just the same process of a mental story that's turning into this self-fulfilling prophecy. And whenever you realize that it's a matter of like kind of like those stories hate truth, so if you just like expose them to a little bit of objective reality, a little bit of 360-degree thinking, they loosen up a bit where you can start to explore, step out of the patterns that you've been in, and then slowly prove to yourself that the way that you've normalized reality is just one way of living, not the only way of living.
So do you think exploration is where trying to is where the battle of intuition and fear come in? Because as
Oh
you
yeah.
explore, you can feel your intuition, but intuition means I have to listen to this thing or I don't. And then that's where fear comes in, right? So like how can people tell the difference between intuition and fear? And how can they listen to intuition instead of the fear? And another question is fear sometimes good because that leads you into listening to your intuition?
Yeah, I think animal fear is good, but intellectual fear is probably bad. So
Okay.
if you're walking, if you're in downtown and you're going and like gonna cut through an alley real quick, and you see like a silhouette down there, and your heart starts beating, and you start getting a little bit sweaty or something like that, and your kind of shields go up. Well, your mind, your animal brain is trying to tell you something. It's saying, "Don't go down there," and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
reason it communicates in that way because like the complexity of our like observational power on an animal level is so strong that to put that into words and into actual thoughts, it's too much and it takes too much time. We need to have quick reactions, and so it emerges in the shape of feelings as opposed to the shape of thoughts. That's why whenever we feel like fear or freaked out, it's because we need quick information, and there's no time for interpretation. Like boom, this is what you feel.
Mhm.
Listen to it.
Mhm.
So that type of fear is good. It's what makes you jump out of a bus whenever it's flying at you quickly because you see it and you go, and
Mhm.
you jump without even thinking. And then you post event process and you think about it. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. So that's
Mhm.
good fear. Bad fear is getting caught in again, in the stories in your mind, kind of in the assumptions and the what ifs, the projections, all of that stuff that we all deal with. Like that type of fear is bad because it's not based on anything other than negative past experiences. It's based
But is
on,
that not anything though?
what do you mean?
Like when you say it's the negative experiences are real.
Uh-huh.
They happened. So they're real things that happened, but I guess it shouldn't dictate how you live out going forward, right? That's where the work comes in. Okay, sorry.
Right. No, it's okay. That's a good question
Mhm.
because it's like you don't want to, I mean, you learn from your past experiences, but you don't let them twist and contort what's happening now. So
Mhm.
if you started a business venture with someone and you trusted them and it went really sideways, but you hadn't kind of done a lot of due diligence and stuff like that because you're like, no, no, we're boys, this is going to be fine. And then
Mhm.
it goes bad, then the next time that you try and get into a business venture with someone new, you've learned a lesson and you're like, all right, let's do this properly. Look deeply into this and like protect everyone involved so that doesn't happen again. Right. But it doesn't mean that you look at it and you're like, no, I'm done doing business because that one thing that happened was bad and all future business ventures are bad, so it's kind of works
Mhm.
like that. And it just in all aspects of life, you know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say like the intuition fear thing, you know, it's pretty popular on social media, you know, and it's like a popular question and thing that people talk about. And
Mm-hmm.
it's one of those things that's it's so complex and slippery and complicated. But my swipe at it is like I think that intuition is generally going to be drawing you towards something. So if you're feeling something about it and you're like, that feels good, it's going to pull you in because it's something you're actually attracted to, and a lot of different aspects of your body and mind want to move towards it. I think
Mm-hmm.
fear is something you're going to feel a physical resistance against that you're going
Mm-hmm.
to not want to do, and you're going to kind of want to back away from and consider and think about a little bit. So I feel like that's kind of the most I can simplify it. But it is one of those things where it's situational, and I think that in any of those cases, you could even like complicate that more. Where if you're like in a situation where you're trying to bet on yourself, let's say you're trying to like become an entrepreneur or something like that, that feels right to you, but can also feel scary at the same time.
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
is there excitement? And that's why I go towards the drawing forward thing. It's like you want to do it and you want to go for it. And that kind of pull, that pushing you forward in your seat, that's how you can go like, okay, I want to do this. It does feel right, but I'm just a little scared of the outcome because it's unfamiliar. But if you're
Mm-hmm.
going to do it and you're resisting it, you don't want to do it, you feel scared and you're kind of putting up reasons to not do it, then it's probably a legitimate fear and you should, look more deeply at what's going on.
Oh man, it's just so complicated. It's so
Yeah.
complicated. Because
Yeah, man.
I'm thinking about like it. It all goes back to, are you able to pay attention first? Because if you're able to pay attention, you're able to listen to your body and your mind and be able to decipher, is this like a good fear, a bad fear, good intuition, or bad intuition? Because if
Hmm.
because I think it's really easy to convince yourself, and I realized this growing up around like drugs and gangs and stuff. Like, um, one of the most profound things somebody ever said to me was my third. I was in third grade. My principal, Mrs. Keys, said at an assembly. We had assembly on Mondays, and she said it's really easy to be bad and it's hard to be good, and I'll never forget that.
Hmm.
And so when I grew up, and I was she like, kids want to be gang bangers, and like they like I remember I had a friend named Marquise in the fourth grade, like, oh, I can't wait to like smoke and like wear red and be a blood and whatever. And I'm just like, Miss Keys said that's like that seems like the easy thing to do, so
Hmm.
I'm not gonna do that. And the more that I like realize, okay, it's easy for these kids in my age and in middle school to be like convince themselves that the bad thing is good. They're not listening and pay attention to their actual animal instincts to be like, okay, hopping in this car to do this drive by or ditch class or whatever. I feel the fear. This is actually intuitively not a good thing to do, but I'm going to convince myself that it is because that's the normal around the environment. So going back to what you said earlier, it's like that's why paying attention is so important to be able to even to decipher intuition and fear. That's why it's so complicated. Because I'm like, even in this day and age with social media, everybody sees these end products and they have no idea if what that person is showing at the end, if it's true, if they're really doing the work, if they have a team,
Yeah.
if they even really believe in what they're selling. You know what I mean? So all that to say, it comes back to being able to pay attention, right? Like that's how you ultimately are able to decipher between the two.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Presence, man. Yeah, presence and paying attention is everything. And that distinction you made is huge. Like in terms of getting into the car thing. Like I've been there as well, you know. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like get into a car with a trunk full of guns and a bunch of,
Mm-hmm.
teenage knuckleheads going to do
Mm-hmm.
do stuff. And somehow I have no idea I had the awareness to go like, I'm good. And like, come on, we're gonna do this. I'm like, "Oh, I'm good," and,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
that night, those guys all got pulled over and arrested, and it's like, whew.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened so
Mm-hmm.
many times for me. And
Mm-hmm.
I also really like you said, being bad is easy, being good is hard. I love that. When you were saying that, I was thinking about like, because being bad is destructive. You're being self-destructive. You're destructing things around you. Maybe you're destructing community.
Mm-hmm.
You're destructing, ways of thinking. being good is challenging because being good is building something. Being good is building a better you, a better way of communication, like more emotional intelligence, better community, better connection, all those type
Hmm.
of things. And that's that
Hmm.
that makes sense, that makes a lot of sense.
Bro, I always go back to just like, man, I think marriage is the hardest thing in the world, bro. So it's so easy to like go back to marriage, but I think about being bad, right? And I'm just like, you know, lashing out when just spazzing out because I'm feeling lonely or mad is so easy, and it feels like so good to just let it out. But the person on the receiving end, the wife, the kids, the husband, whatever, they don't, this isn't beneficial to anybody. The hard thing to do is to go to that place of isolation that is lonely,
Yeah.
figure out how do I articulate this and process this to like get it to the person on the receiving end so we can have a collective, constructive conversation for the betterment of the relationships. That's so damn hard, bro. Like that's that's so hard. You know what I mean? It's easy to just lash out. And again, that's why I love what Miss Key said, because it's in everything that I've ever noticed in my life. Like with football, like my homeboys were like go and like party and drink and smoke and whatever. I wouldn't touch anything. I would not touch nothing. I'm like, this doesn't align with the goal at the end, right?
Mhm.
To win the championship, to win the game, to get the fast time, to get the bench press. And it doesn't line up. But it was easy to go out with everybody else and go drink, go smoke, go party or whatever. Back to what Miss Key said. It's easy to be bad. It's hard to be good. And I think this leans into like the last thing that I really want to talk to you about, which is being brave. And I
Mhm.
think it's easy to think about being brave as like, I'm the first person on like the line and I'm going into war and I'm gonna die first. I'm like, well, that's not the most strategic thing to do in my
Yeah.
opinion. But like if you you know what I mean? But like if you wanna go, I always think of like Forrest Gump when Captain Dane like he
Yeah,
just
yeah,
wanted to die
Captain
so bad. I'm
Dan.
like, bro, like yo, like I'm happy your folks did it, you know what I'm saying? But like this ain't like the smartest thing to do because like you ain't gonna be here that much longer, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like if you want to like package being brave in that way, it's like fine. But when Forrest took you and and got you out of Vietnam, you're married now, you got prosthetics, you have a great life. So where does brave even like really like how do we define that? And I think it's in for me personally, and I'd love to hear your take on this. It's in the daily battles, like the small t's that we only internally we deal with, that we have to figure out ourselves, hopefully in some community, and now we have to go out and live those inner battles and like learn how to process and articulate. Like to me, that's what being brave really is. Like nobody really even sees it. It's not brave heart, you know what I'm saying? Like we're
Yeah.
not like weighing with the sword, we're on the horse going out there doing the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I totally agree. And first off, you just made me realize that the Lieutenant Dan character and storyline is like a metaphor for breaking generational trauma. And then him losing his
Mm.
legs was a literal rebirth into a
Mm.
new identity beyond his generational inheritance. Pretty
Mm.
deep. Um,
Mm.
so in terms of braveness, yeah, it's what you said, man. It's being willing to look at yourself. It's being willing to look at yourself, man, because our egos will do everything they can to blame other people, to not take responsibility, to rationalize our behavior, and just keep this main character thing going on. And it's only until you look at yourself where you start to be able to unpack that conditioning, to notice your habits, to be able to repattern the destructive patterns that you've been living in your entire life, and I really think that like man that, it's it's so hard because you know the way that our minds are constructed, it's like the ego is such a huge part of it, and it just will fight our heart, tooth and nail to stay in control and to feel powerful and invulnerable. And it's just we have to actively work to notice whenever that's happening and to really look at ourselves and to surrender, which is a term I hated forever because maybe, if we have some similarities in our backgrounds, like you never surrender. You go, you figure it out, you fight
No, we
through it,
going to the
you break
end, bro.
through. Yeah,
Fight
yeah.
to the end.
And so it's like, I'm not going to surrender to some authority, to some circumstance, to some
Hmm.
hypothetical, not even to myself. And, finally, I realized that that actually means surrendering the will of the ego to the wisdom of the heart.
Mm.
It's you surrender to yourself, not to some outside thing. And so you give over that will and that aggression of the ego to the gentleness and the understanding of your own heart, and you allow yourself to look inward with gentleness and compassion and kindness, and you actually can nurture yourself in those moments instead of react and embolden your aggression or your kind of destructive behavior. And I think what people will find is that the earliest stages of doing that are the most difficult because it's unfamiliar territory. It's like we don't know. We're going out into the wilderness without a map. It's so, yeah, it's a little scary, and it could feel uncomfortable. But once you do it once, you'll see that it's not scary. Um, it's deeply, deeply enriching, and each time you do it, from there on, it's like it's a moment in your life in the timeline
Mm.
where from then forward, you're suffering from that pain. You're moving through life with like your blinders widened a little bit more. And now
Mm.
from then on, that's what life is like because your awareness is expanded, your self-awareness is expanded. And you do it again, it happens more. You do it again, it happens again. And then you start to get a taste for it,
Mm.
because then you're like,
That's
hold on a
half the
second.
fun. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because you're like, because 6 months ago, I felt like a way different person. And now I'm speaking clearly. I'm aware of what I'm saying when I'm saying it. I'm integrating how I'm feeling with what I'm saying at the same time. Imagine that, you know?
Hmm.
And for me, my thought was like, how far can this go?
Hmm.
How far can this
Hmm.
go? Like because I want to be what I like to call like a full spectrum human. It's like
Hmm.
you can be really successful, you can be smart, you can be, have a big audience, whatever it is, and you can live a good life with all of that weird compartmentalization and that weird sort of detached isolation. Sure, you can live a good life like that, but why stop there? Why not feel everything and really try and complete yourself and be like, let me get to the deeper parts of myself that are unexplored. Let me learn how to really like get in touch with my emotions, with like meaning, with what matters, and have actual deep connections and relationships. And instead of just kind of having this comfortable existence, let's really go there and let's experience it all and become, the most integrated and most wise and loving person that we can be while we're here.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like to me, being able to live a full human life is being able to feel. That's one thing I learned from you. It's one thing I learned from Young Pueblo. It's one thing I learned from Jordan Peterson. And I think most importantly, it's something that I really learned from myself by paying attention. It's like there's when you start anything, it's always hard. Doesn't matter what it is. When you start something in the beginning, it's always difficult. But when you do it over and over, it starts to get easy. And then you're like, oh, I can do this. And that's where I think true confidence comes in. Now, when I have conversations with my wife, I feel really good going in because I'm not trying to win a battle. I'm not trying to win a conversation. I'm just trying to have a conversation. When my kids come up to me with an emotion, I'm not trying to help them get over it because I can't handle that they're having a hard time. Like our we had to put our dog down 2 weeks ago, and this was my first time my kids are going to deal with loss. And I
Mm,
remember being like, yo, there's not much I really can do. And dog, let me tell you something,
mm,
sitting with that, oh, talk about a full human experience. I'm just like, there's nothing I can do. And I have to be okay with that. I have to be okay with, like, they're going to lose the dog, they're going to be sad, and that's it.
yeah.
And that's a lot of growth in itself to like sit with that pain. But again, going back to what I was getting at is like that's a full human experience, and I believe that makes me a better person because now that grows my empathy, it grows my sympathy, and it honestly helps me with probably some creative problem solving just because that's just how I'm
Mhm.
wired. You know what I mean? It's like, can I get them a stuffed animal that looks like Kobe? Can that help? You know what I mean? I did that, and they sleep with that. They sleep with that stuffed animal every single night. So there's some kind of closure there. You know what I mean? So all that to say, I do believe what you said is 100% right. Like being brave is being able to look in the mirror. I say that I've been saying that since day one. Like I have to look in the mirror, and that's what football taught me. Is like watching film every day. It's like, I mean,
Mm.
it's right there. Like I didn't. I'm not playing good. You know what I mean? So like, I'm either gonna play good, or I'm gonna keep playing bad, or I'm gonna fix it. And like that was such a healthy thing for me. I mean, healthy. Like when you watch it in front of like bad coaches and players who make fun of you, like that. That's why all them little T's compounded up. You know
Right.
what I mean? That's why I had all them little
That's
T's.
right.
But it taught me to be like, only person that can fix that is you. You know, and like I take that into my life and being able to like look in the mirror. I want to be a full human being. I want to be a loving dad, a loving husband, and a good human being. Like when I go on when I lie on my deathbed, one thing I want to say is I felt good in my body, and people felt good when they were around me,
Mm.
and that takes a lot of work, because if I don't feel good in my body, I'm not doing the right things in my life structurally with my routines, putting the right things in my body, and and because of that, the people around me don't feel good around me. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And like that
Hmm.
takes you have to be brave to do that and admit that to yourself. Um, so yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but like yeah, like bravery, like I think that's really what it takes, is looking in the mirror and being like, okay, it's me and you, and nobody's gonna see it. Nobody.
Yeah, yeah,
What are you gonna
absolutely.
do?
And you crushed a really challenging lesson that I think a lot of people don't move through as gracefully as you did when you talked about, first off, I'm sorry you lost your dog. I mean, I love my dog so much, and I understand, going through that is
Thank
so
you.
rough, man.
Hmm.
Um, but feeling what you're describing is helplessness. And man, helplessness is humbling.
Hmm.
Whenever you're in a moment where there's a big life thing happening and you're used to being able to kind of shake the earth a little bit and make things happen and you can't, like, it's hard to respond to that. But the fact that you responded to it with acceptance is that's everything, man. That's like incredible
Hmm.
growth. That's incredible self-wisdom and understanding and insight, because you can try and fight that. You can try and, manipulate that moment, that situation into somehow trying to fix it or to make it something different than it is. But man,
Hmm.
just being able to let go and step back and accept the true nature of reality. It's like, this is what's happening. My ego, I can't do anything about this. I need to be present with it and just allow, because this is life right now. And
Hmm.
then being able to constructively and with emotional intelligence think like, how can I support the daughters now that this is just what's happening and we're going to go through this. That's really beautiful, man. You do a wonderful. I just want to say, like, the way that you articulated and experienced that was really, really fantastic.
Thank you, man. You're like giving me you're speaking my love language right now. Like then my counselor just helped me understand. You know what I mean? I really like again, like nobody ever sees this work, and like I don't really get to talk about it with people that I really don't trust. And like I think your work has obviously made me trust you because you've done the work. Like I know your backstory. I know how you grew up. I know all those things. So I know you did the work. So I'm willing to share here in front of the world because I think that this is. I mean, I'm just gonna say it. I believe this is what everybody wants. I think
Yeah.
everybody wants to feel good internally. And I think to be able to feel good, you have to be able to look in the mirror. And most importantly, when you look in the mirror, do the work. Do the work. And I think the part that's hard that I struggle with, and maybe you can help us with this as we end, is how do people do the work? How do they find the resources in a world where there are so many resources
Hmm.
and there's so many people and there's so many articles and podcasts and all these things? How do people find, air quotes, the right resources?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think there's no right answer. I think the answer is you have to explore things and you have to like check out some books, check out podcasts, like check out some people on, check out reputable people on social media, check out various teachings and paths of wisdom and stuff like that, and see what you're drawn to, see what feels good to you. Because if you find some type of modality that doesn't like match your personality, you're not going to pursue it because it's just a bad match. It doesn't feel good. You don't enjoy doing the work. And so I think finding teachers and, people that offer guidance that you resonate with, that's really important, and even just reading books like, oh, this is making sense. This is opening doors. This is like key. Sorry about that.
It's all good. It's all good.
It's like, I said keys open doors, and then I got, the spirit of clips just came in. That came through. I have a Pusha T ghost in my laptop, man. Anytime I
Oh, really?
uh,
That's so funny.
anyway, but yeah, finding people that resonate with you. Like you read a book wherever you feel like keys unlocking things in your mind, and get you excited, and you feel that integration, that understanding happening, then you can kind of learn what style of stuff makes sense for you. But I really think it's important to just kind of explore a lot of different types of books, a lot of different types of teachers, a lot of different, podcasts and these type of things. And even like if you're going to a therapist, like some people have, or they displace their sort of parent God archetype thing onto their therapist. Like, okay, this person knows what's right. I'm going to listen to them. It's like, no, they're just another person. And they're probably a therapist because they went through a lot of stuff too. So they're complicated as well. So, like if, the therapist you're talking to, if it's not feeling good, if it's not getting you anywhere, then maybe try a different therapist. Yeah.
Yes, bro. Get out. Like, I think you nailed it. It's like you have to explore. You're not going to find it right away. You might love it for a year. It gets old and you find a new teacher. Everybody is looking for, like, I'm going to find this is going to change my life. It's not going to happen because you grow, you outgrow things, and sometimes you go back to the thing that gave you a good foundational block in your building, and that's okay to go back and like look at that thing for a little bit. I do that all the time, but it's like you grow, and that's what you hope. You grow, and you just grow, and it's okay to go back to that old resource and like leave the thing that served you really well, because that's what we want, is we want to grow and keep moving forward. Right.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, man. Cory, thank you so much for hopping on me. This is like everything I knew it would be, man. Like, I love what you do. And I think I always love speaking to people who are just so intentional about their life, because life is hard. And I think it's ultimately what we make it by what has happened to us. I've always said, like, we are more than what made us, but it's ultimately us who have to realize that and do the work. So thank you for the books that you've written, the things you do online. I think they're so, I don't think they are so helpful, man. And they've really helped revolutionize my way of thinking in my life. So I thank you for what you're doing, man. It really means a lot to me.
Amazing, man. Thank you. I received that. I hear it. It means a lot, man. Thank you.